What's up, guys? Barry Gaming here, back with some more Idle Heroes news for May 16, 2023. See, this time I remembered it's May and not April, like last time. Anyway, we now have Mutated Fungus Geester's skill card, and there's one really big thing that jumps out. This is a dot damage dealer that can basically detonate those dots for huge amounts of damage, very much like a supercharged Ithaqua and a better version, of course, of his regular version, Geester in the Forest faction. But there's one keyword, or at least the way it's written on his skill card, that really reminds me of Ithaqua, but it's only on his basic attack. They use the keywords dealing damage by a certain percentage of the damage dealt. So that's kind of what Ithaqua's passive does, but that's for all of Ithaqua's damage. This one, I'm not sure if it's going to work out that way, but this does seem like a hero for those of you guys who want to push Star Expedition, bosses, things like that. You're going to want this hero's core active on your teams on top of having your your Mystic Fairy Freya dealing additional damage to poison targets, because his core does something very similar to Mystic Fairy Freya's sublimation. So if you're already poisoning the targets, you want to do bonus damage to poison targets, just like Mystic Fairy Freya does. You're probably going to want to find a spot for him in the lineup, which probably means you might have to sit something like an Olivia, just so that your team has enough survivability at this point. We'll have to see. Hopefully you guys know us. Let's get in the skill card and see what we can get out of this hero. Okay, so let's start off with his active ability. We actually have the full image file now, which means the thumbnail is going to look pretty cool. But Mutated Fungus Geester, let's get it zoomed into about here. So active ability is called Fiery Venom. Deals damage to enemies with the lowest HP, so sounds like multiple targets with the lowest HP, not just a single target, but still going after lowest HP like assassins do in the game. Burn and poison the target for several rounds respectively. Now see, this isn't the part that says by a percentage of the damage dealt. If his active does it too, then it's very much like Ithaqua. The active doesn't sound like it is at all though. If self has resolve, each layer will deal attack damage to a random enemy. Afterward, grant self layers of resolve for several rounds. When self is under mutation awakening status, restores HP by a certain percentage of self damage dealt, so it's like a lifesteal effect, increases self attack and speed for several rounds, and grants self extra layers of resolve, basically, that you need for this attack to do extra hits. Mutation awakening this here, when you're under mutation awakening, this is a skill effect that we'll talk about a little bit later. We're going to kind of go through these pretty quick, and then we're going to talk about what that means for the hero. First passive is the one that I was talking about. So Blindside changes the basic attack to deals attack damage to enemies with the lowest HP. Or the enemy, one single target, it sounds like, burns and poisons the target, dealing damage by a certain percentage of damage dealt. That is the very key word here, because there's only one other hero that applies dots in this manner, and that is, again, Ithaqua. For several rounds, respectively, releases the same attack on random enemies one more time when self is under mutation awakening status. So again, mutation awakening is pretty much the big keyword here. Resolve, of course, additional hits, but mutation awakening is where things really get spicy, getting additional hits with the passive, the basic attack, and getting buffs to your actual damage and healing through like a lifesteal effect. So all these things, they remind me of Ithaqua, but the fact that this right here, the dealing damage by a certain percentage, is attached only to the basic attack is what gets me a little bit skeptical that it's not going to be quite an Ithaqua level hero. And maybe that's why they kind of broke it up. So part of the poisons and burns that you're applying are that way, and other poisons and burns are just based on your attack value. Again, we're really going to have to see Thursday what his percentages look like, and we will be live streaming this on Thursday as well, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Now, his other passives here. Let's go over this. Mutated Detonation. When the active skill and base attack deal damage to poisoned or burned targets, deals extra damage to burn and poison targets, capping at a certain percentage of Geester's attack. So this part right here doesn't say it consumes them, which this part sounds good. And then caps at a certain percentage of the mutated fungus, releases virulent toxin mutated immediately to all enemies when self HP is under a designated percentage of life for the first time. Kind of like when Fairy Queen Vesa drops below a certain percentage, she'll get that proc heal. What this is doing is the skill effect here detonates all layers of poison and burn, dealing the total remaining dot damage. But of course, it is capped, just like Ithaqua was back in the day, at probably a percentage of attack. That it's interesting, but I mean, this detonation doesn't technically happen so long as you stay above a certain percentage of HP, it sounds like. When self HP is under designated percentage. See, as long as the HP percentage stays up there, the stacks should keep stacking, because again, most of the time dot damage will deal more damage than detonating them will do. So overall, in a 15 round battle for bosses, this would be a bad thing if you did drop below that percentage. Is something to keep in mind. Next up, we have fungi nourishing passives. So at the beginning of each battle, grant self layers of mutated genes. These are the things that we're talking about when the active and basic skill consumes layers of mutated genes when releasing active skills. Enters mutation awakening status when all layers of mutated genes are consumed until the end of battle. I'm guessing you have to like get a certain number of stacks of these, and then that's when it happens. When self is under mutation awakening status, reduces the damage taken by a certain percentage of self attack. That's pretty good. That's pretty much like an Augustus Magic Ball, an A and B, a Splendid A and B type of effect, which is pretty cool. And then Mutated Genes is the skill effect. Each layer increases self-control immunity. When self has mutated genes, restores self by a certain percentage of attack of HP. So again, good survivability tied in with this passive. Overall, I like it. And then this is where it gets a little spicy. The Core of Origin right here. At the beginning of each battle, increases all allies' damage dealt to poison targets and increases all allies' damage dealt to burned targets until the battle ends. Now, the interesting thing will be is if you have a burn and a poison, will it stack? Because in that case, you might, if we don't have like a hero that we put on our lineup that has a burn, maybe using the Phoenix over the Snake is really going to trump it for those couple rounds that the burn is actually on there. We'll have to see. Allies will release extra attacks after releasing active skills, dealing extra poison damage and burn damage for several rounds. If self is under that mutation awakening that we just talked about up above, status detonates all layers of poisons and burn, dealing a certain percentage of the total remaining dot damage. Detonation will have a cap. So this is the one part I'm confused about here. If self is under mutation awakening status, I'm guessing the first time you do get to that mutation awakening status, you'll detonate it all, but like, that only happens when you maybe get to a certain number of layers, and then it doesn't happen again. So there's like two different ways that this hero can technically detonate the poison and dot damage for big burst damage in normal cases, but against like Star Expedition, where I think he might have the most use, that is a negative, because usually you want to be stacking that up, maybe even having a brand new lineup completely with Delasiums. But if there's only one enemy, Delasium, I don't think, can Delasium actually replicate? I think he can extend the duration of debuffs, but I don't think he can replicate, which really the holy power of Ithaqua comes from that replication from Delasium. So I don't know if that's as important. This does sound important though, the increasing all allies damage to poison targets and increases all allies damage to burn target, because that's the whole point Mystic Fairy Freya is used in lineups because of her sublimation, and that's just his skill set, guys. That's not even including what each one of these branches can have with the sublimations. The core sounds promising, maybe in addition to the normal Star Expedition team to boost up extra damage. And then lastly, we have his Tenant. So the one thing I saw written on Facebook, it says Tenants, he's Tenant for Lord of Death Azrael and Doom Terminator Vulcan. That's not a good thing for Doom Terminator Vulcan, really. It is what it is. Lord of Death Azrael, I mean, it is what it is yet again. This is a very, very, very weak home setup. Hopefully this is wrong. Last couple times, this has been kind of wrong. Like, they've tweaked it a little bit. But this, I mean, Assassin or Vulcan, Assassin, Priest, that's like the weakest lineup you could potentially have for a hero. So this part, not too excited about, but let me know what you guys think. Hopefully you guys enjoy this one. Maybe Ithaqua 2.0. We're just gonna have to see how this hero works out, especially against where he's probably gonna be needed the most, Star Expedition boss. Hopefully you guys enjoy this one. I'll see you guys next time.